Welcome to Healthy Living. I'm Lori Johnson. So glad you tuned in today because we have a great show because my special guest is Michael Moss, author of the brand new book called Hooked: Food, Free Will, and How the Food Giants Exploit Our Addictions. Michael, great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So this book is an expose on the processed food industry and how they engineer their products to make them utterly irresistible to us, and also the health consequences that ensue. Why did you write this book?
As you know, my last book, Salt, Sugar, Fat, came out a few years ago. And the very first question I got when it came out was, wait a minute, Michael, isn't these things you're writing about, aren't they as addictive as drugs or cigarettes or alcohol? And my first kind of instinct was to say, no, are you kidding me? I mean, how can Twinkies or Oreos be addictive as heroin? And then the second thing that happened was I got an invitation from the biggest food giant of all, Nestle in Switzerland. They wanted me to come to talk to them about salt, sugar, fat, which surprised me because I sort of held some special slyness out for them in the book, and I was surprised they wanted to talk to me at all. But they wanted to show me how they were leading the processed food industry in reducing lots of the salt, sugar, fat in their products. And yet, as the years went by, if anything, sort of our addiction to ultra-processed foods, if anything, has increased, and our trouble with food has increased. So I wanted to know, what is it about these products that's so seductive to us beyond salt, sugar, fat, and things that we might not even think of?
Well, it's absolutely fascinating. And this is a topic that is important to each one of us because we all are bombarded with these processed foods. But before we go any further, let's define processed foods. A lot of folks aren't really sure what we mean when we talk about food giants or processed foods. Can you give us a definition?
Yeah, so if you think about the grocery store, processed food, and especially what people are starting to call ultra-processed foods, are those products made of components that involves so much technology and processing that they no longer recognize kind of their original form. And I'm thinking of like even the cereal aisle of the grocery store, they will say they're made with grain, but when you pour it into your bowl, it really doesn't look like anything that was grown in nature. Basically, 90% of the grocery store, what companies call the center of the store, is where you're going to find processed food, much of that ultra-processed food, as opposed to fresh fruits and vegetables, meats, dairy, which are on the outer edge of the store.
I really want to get into what you found out about processed foods and how addictive they are, especially compared to alcohol and nicotine and hard drugs. But before we move to that, how prevalent are processed foods? You said they make up most of the grocery store, but as far as like how much processed food do average Americans eat as far as like their average intake of calories? What percentage is processed foods?
We on average now are getting about 75%, 3 and 4 calories from processed foods, as opposed to whole grains, fruits and vegetables that I mentioned, or meat or dairy. It's a huge part of our diet.
And so why do people prefer processed foods so much? Is it's just because they're so delicious, or are there other reasons?
One of the things that astounds me, look, I mean, I've been crawling through the underbelly of the processed food industry for 10 years now, and I continue to be shocked by the level of their cunning, deviousness, if you will, in being able to sort of figure out what draws us to the products to make us want, not just like them, but want more and more. And of course, salt, sugar, fat, I focused on in the last book, are very powerful things. They get the brain excited, and it sends a signal saying, wow, Michael, I love that. Can I have some more of that? But there are some real basic instincts that we have that the food industry, the largest food companies, have learned to use in the creation and the marketing of their products. And so, for example, we are drawn by instinct to food that's really low cost And so they work day and night to get the cost of their products down. And that's fine. Look, many people have a really tight budget and need the least expensive foods that they can have. But it's also something that sends that signal to the brain, wow, I love cheapness of this food. I want more of it. Variety. They know that we have a strong basic instinct for a variety of food. It's called the smorgasbord effect, and it's why you can eat at a smorgasbord, fill up until you're stuffed, but then look down the table and see something new and go, okay, I can fit that in. Or again, the brain gets excited by that, wanting more. The other thing that they've learned is that we are hooked by nature on calories, right? Because if you think about it, sort of way back when, having body fat and having overeating, in fact, was a really good thing for us. It gave us energy, it allowed us to have lots of babies and grow as a species. And so we have sensors in our body, in the gut, possibly in the mouth, that can detect the amount of calories in food, which again was a really good thing until maybe 50 years ago when the processed food industry changed the nature of food. And they started making products where the calories are packed in really densely. So like, think the opposite of a stick of celery or carrots. You know, these are foods that are highly compact with fats and oils and sugars and carbohydrates. And so what happens is that we get far more calories eating a smaller amount of food than we used to. And we haven't sort of caught up with that issue. So our brain doesn't say, wait a minute, Michael, you just ate 2,000 calories in that snack bag. Stop, wait a minute. Your brain is kind of put to sleep and it's going, okay, let's have some more. Great taste.
Now, are these food manufacturers purposefully making them addictive?
They don't like the word addictive, I have to say. You know, it causes them a little angst, but privately when they're talking to each other about their efforts to maximize the seductiveness, the allure of their products, they use words like snackability, craveability. One of my favorites is more-ishness, as in, how do we get people to want more of this product? I mean, look, this is not like this evil empire, $1.5 trillion big, by the way, that's intentionally setting out to get us to overeat to the point where we're not healthy. These are companies doing what kind of all companies want to do, which is to sell as much product as possible by maximizing the attractiveness of their products. The problem comes, and where I really focused on Hook, and we're almost unwitting, co-conspirators in this, is that biologically, these deep instincts we have make us incredibly vulnerable to overeating.
Wow, that's so perfectly put, and you've really laid out the problem very well. We're going to take a quick break and be right back with Michael Moss. The new book is called Hooked: Food, Free Will, and How the Food Giants Exploit Our Addictions. Stay tuned.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time: keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
You know, I think as a father, it's my job, to lead. Just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
Welcome back to Healthy Living, continuing our conversation with Michael Moss, author of the brand new book called Hooked: Food, Free Will, and How the Food Giants Exploit Our Addictions. So we know that these processed foods, Michael, are just enormously addictive. What can we do to avoid eating so much of them?
At the end of salt, sugar, fat, I so strongly believed that information was power. And the more we knew about their efforts to sort of control our eating habits, the more we'd be able to walk into the grocery store and kind of laugh at all their marketing schemes, because you can kind of see them right on the front of the packages. But with Hooked, I realized we have to go further again, because they're tapping these instincts that are so quickly going into our head and causing us to act impulsively that I think we need a better plan. And so part of the solution, I think, is anticipating those moments when we're most vulnerable to crave one of their products. For some people, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon wanting cookies or a bag of chips. And so thinking ahead to what am I going to do when 3 o'clock comes and I sort of mindlessly get up from my work or my family responsibilities, go to the kitchen and grab a snack like that. The other thing that I've been thinking about lately, though, is a little different too, but it's almost like turning the tables on the food companies and even using processing and high technology to our advantage. So, for example, freezing was something that was invented for us to freeze fruits and vegetables and fish. The food giants took freezing and loaded up the freezer aisle of the grocery store with, all of these highly processed products that, if you eat too many of them, become problematic. So, but there are still really fantastic things in the freezer aisle that you can grab, buy, use for yourself using the high technology of freezing. One of my favorite things are frozen blueberries. And the other thing I got to thinking too, if your eating habit, if one of your eating habits that you maybe want to change is soda, sugary drinks, one of the things to realize is that the brain gets almost as excited about the bubbles in soda as it does about the sugar. And so I know this in my own family. I had a teenager who was hooked on soda. I started to introduce him to plain seltzer, no sugar at all. And it took a few days, maybe it was a couple of weeks, but eventually he has switched over and he loves the plain seltzer, even without any flavoring. And sort of what's going on there is sort of our ability to use even technology, but food science, brain science, and use it to our advantage in changing our eating habits.
One thing I found really fascinating about the book is how you talked about the general public wanting to have healthier food. And so the food giants sort of manipulated their packaging and products to make them seem healthy, even seem like they're diet foods, but they're really not, right?
I had no idea, but the largest food companies actually bought the dieting industry. Weight Watchers, Lean Cuisine, all of these big names, Atkins, all these big names that we thought, were owned by, organizations or what have you, actually were owned by the food companies. And then the grocery store sort of blossomed with these products that were billed as diet, better for us. But really, when you looked at the ingredients and the nutrition, weren't all that different from their full calorie foods. And not only that, but we're in this kind of phase now where all the companies are scrambling because so many more people are caring about what they put in their bodies. They want a healthier product. And so the companies are coming up with new ways to present their same old products in a new, better light. And so they're adding protein to sugary cereal that's still probably not so healthy for you. They're putting in lots of fiber in products and touting that on the front of the label, even though a lot of that fiber really doesn't work to fill you up like fiber should. They're even fiddling with our DNA to find ways to tweak our DNA in a way that might cause us to be able to eat as much as we want without gaining weight. So they're being even sort of more cunning now and devious in their drive for sales by sort of playing to, and exploiting, if you will, our attempts to regain control of our eating habits.
Wow, this is such a wake-up call. We're going to take another quick break. We'll be right back with Michael Moss. The book is called Hooked: Food, Free Will, and How the Food Giants Exploit Our Addictions. Stay with us.
Region's first ROTC graduate student.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm Ephraim Graham. Welcome to Studio 5.
Get on it.
All that's new and now in the world of uplifting entertainment with celebrity interviews.
There's a higher contribution I will make.
Musical performances.
I'll give you my best praise.
Plus movie and TV news.
See it and be uplifted.
On Studio 5. Every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern at cbn.com/Studio 5.
How'd you like to get a redo on your health, on your body, on your arteries, so you could have the energy you had 20 years ago? The great news is you can. I'm Dr. Mike ROIZEN, chair of the Wellness Institute at the Cleveland Clinic. I've written 4 New York Times bestsellers. But even better than having to read all that, you can listen to this DVD and watch it. Protect your heart? Yes, you can. Here's how.
Go to CBN.com or call 1-800-700-7000 for your free copy of Protect Your Heart. Let the medical experts show you their new discoveries on how to avoid heart disease and even reverse it. Easy steps to uncover the hidden dangers in your medicine cabinet, reduce stress, and get a complete do-over for your health. Call 1-800-700-7000. That's 1-800-700-7000. Or go to CBN.com to claim your free copy of Protect Your Heart.
We're back and continuing our conversation with Michael Moss, author of the new book, Hooked: Food, Free Will, and How the Food Giants Exploit Our Addictions. So, Michael, we've already established that processed food is unhealthy, and even so much of the diet food that these processed food industries present. What can people do to eat healthy and lose weight when they're so interested in convenience?
Convenience is another one of those big driving forces. And look, we all have time constraints. We all have, cost budgets in eating food, and that's why especially ultra processed food is so attractive to us. Changing eating habits is a really hard thing. We have a lifetime of being manipulated into bad eating habits, and whatever you do isn't going to happen overnight. So the first thing is you have to be patient. And I think the other good advice I've heard from experts is that maybe just try to pick one thing to change your diet and see how that goes. For me, one of the most attractive things to eliminate from my eating is sugary drinks. And I find that to be actually relatively easy to do. We talked about the bubbles and soda, drinking plain seltzer instead. And then maybe the third thing too is just, be comfortable with trying to cook more. I know that cooking, especially the shopping and the planning part of it, can seem really arduous and take up a lot of time, but there's a lot of cooking you can do from scratch that doesn't take a lot of time. I'm thinking of pasta sauce, for example, where you can control the amount of salt, sugar, fat going into the product. The cost is less. The time putting in preparing the dinner from scratch is actually a huge benefit people are finding to their ability to sort of control how much they eat and not lose control to the products.
So you really focus on the addictive nature of processed foods in your book. And a lot of people might be skeptical and say, I don't know if it's actually an addiction. Is there something people can see, tangible evidence like brain scans that prove a person is a food addict?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I did, and look, I was really skeptical at first too, but one of the first things I did was talk to researchers who used to study addictive drugs, and then they turned their focus to highly processed foods because it was such an even larger sort of public health issue. But one of the places I turned to was the tobacco industry, which for decades denied that smoking was addictive vehemently. They would compare cigarettes to Twinkies, right? But then in the year 2000, the biggest tobacco company of all, Philip Morris, completely turned around, conceded that smoking was addictive, in part because the definition has changed over the years. And the CEO of the company was asked, well, what do you mean by addiction? He goes, well, addiction is, a repetitive behavior that some people find difficult to quit. And the sum is really important because not everybody is going to act compulsively with every product. It varies from person to person, time to time. But there's a really telling example at Philip Morris. The former general counsel, right, the chief lawyer of the company, was chatting with him, and he said, look, I could smoke very occasionally. I could have a cigarette once a day, maybe only in meetings, and not feel any drive to smoke for the rest of the day. But if you put in front of me a bag of Oreos, and this was very telling because at the time Philip Morris owned the Oreo brand, he said, I would totally lose control and I would end up eating half the bag or more. So these are tobacco executives recognizing, and look, if you want to call it a very bad habit or very, very bad habit as opposed to addiction, fine. But they were recognizing the power of ultra-processed foods to hook us and want us to have more and more, to get us to overeat in the context of other things that we now consider to be totally addictive, like smoking.
Okay, we're going to take one more break and be right back with Michael Moss. The book is called Hooked.
Introducing the CBN Bible from CBN.com. Now, an easier way to study the Bible and grow in your faith. Highlight your favorite verse. Read separate versions at a glance. Click and read a commentary. Or cross-reference your favorite verse using the Strong's Concordance. All the right tools to study the Bible, all in one place. The CBN Bible, available at cbn.com/Bible or the iTunes App Store.
This is CBN Newswatch.
Thanks for joining us.
Watch breaking news, exclusive stories and programs, credible news reporting.
We show you what's happening in the world and how you can pray about it.
This is CBN Newswatch, because truth matters. Weekdays at 5 on the CBN News Channel.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Millsburg Falls, man. Come.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes, too. And so much more! Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
We're back talking with Michael Moss. The book is called Hooked. And, you know, Michael, a lot of people would say, hey, you know, don't body shame. You know, there's nothing wrong with being overweight. So what if I'm addicted to processed food? Is it really that bad for you? What would you say to that?
So, look, I mean, a certain amount of weight is probably perfectly fine. I mean, your doctor can advise you on whether losing weight would be a good thing for you to do from your health perspective. But I became fascinated by body fat for another reason. It turns out that fat is a full-fledged organ in our body that communicates with the brain and the rest of the body. And its sole purpose in life is to fight any effort on your part to lose fat. It's an incredibly cunning thing. And not only that, but when you put on weight, new brain studies have shown you become more vulnerable to what psychologists call cues, marketing, advertising, billboards. So two people driving down the street and see a billboard for a fast food restaurant may have very different reactions. But as you gain weight, that body fat is actually working to get you to continue to eat more calories and eat more food than you should. And that's just one of the challenges you face once you gain too much weight, and one of the difficulties in trying to lose weight too. You're fighting your own body fat.
So you actually call this sort of a David and Goliath story, but it can be done. How do we train our brains to revalue what we see in food?
Yeah, there's scientists sort of working on that. And you've hit that exactly, that phrase, like what do we really value in this food? And some of that retraining sort of lies in the area of thinking about the consequences, because the difficulty in eating healthy for yourself is that that's a long-term proposition. The negative effects of a bad diet may not show up for 10 or 20 years. So you need to work on thinking about, what is my heart going to look like 20 years from now if I'm standing in line at the pastry shop and I want to buy that luscious pastry, to associate that pastry not with lusciousness and that quick brain reward of taste, but rather the long-term consequences. And you put that exactly. How do we revalue what we see and appreciate in food?
Fantastic. Well, I wish we had more time, but unfortunately we're out of time for now. Once again, Michael Moss, the book is called Hooked: Food, Free Will, and How the Food Giants Exploit Our Addictions. Thanks so much for joining us today. It was great to be with you.
Likewise, thank you.
And thanks to you for tuning in to this edition of Healthy Living. I'm Lori Johnson. We'll see you again next time.